a man was once sitting in a cafe, outdoor table in a cafe. And he sees across the street 2 city workers. The first was digging a hole, and then the second one would follow behind him and fill the hole. And they would go a couple more steps. The first would dig a hole, and his partner would come behind him and fill the hole. And they continued doing this through the length of the entire block until they finally made their way across the street where this man is sitting at the cafe. And as they reach the spot in front of him, he just has to ask. He says to them, listen, I've been watching you 2 work for the past 20 minutes or so, and I can't for the life of me figure out what you're doing. So the first guy says, yeah, there's usually 3 of us working together, but the guy who plants the tree is sick today. So talking about trees, we have just entered the Hebrew month of Shvat. And the significant day in Shvat is coming up next week. It's Tu B'Shvat. Next week, yeah. The 15th day of Shvat. And that is the day when we celebrate trees and their fruits. Specifically, the 7 fruits that are the fruits that the land of Israel is blessed with. 2 grains, wheat and barley, and the 5 fruits, the grapes, pomegranate, figs, olives, and the last one is the dates. So it's a custom on Tu B'Shvat to partake in some of those fruits, the fruits of Israel, and to eat a new fruit, a fruit that you haven't yet eaten this season. So we could recite the blessing of Shechianu, which is the blessing we recite on new things. Now the Mishnah actually terms Tu B'Shvat as the new year for trees, the Rosh Hashanah for trees. Now what exactly does that mean? What does a new year for trees mean? So really it has to do with Jewish agricultural laws in the land of Israel. That's what it boils down to. So in other words, from one Tu B'Shvat to the next is sort of a fiscal year for trees, for fruit-bearing trees. For example, there's a Jewish law called Ma'aser, which means tithes, giving 10% of what we have to charity. Now, Jewish agriculture works in a 7-year cycle. So the 7th year is the Shemitah year. I don't know if you've heard of that term, if you're familiar with it. Shemitah is when the land rests, when the land is not worked. Okay, that's the 7th year, and then we begin again from year 1. Now, with regards to Ma'aser, to tithes, each year of the cycle there's a different kind of Ma'aser that we're obligated in the land of Israel. For example, the first year of the cycle we have, or actually all six years of the cycle, we give 10% of all produce to the tribe of Levi. In the 3rd and 6th year, for example, we give Ma'aser, we give 10% of what's left after the standard Ma'aser, we give to poor people. In year 1, 2, 4, and 5 of the cycle, we give a different kind of Ma'aser. We have to give 10% of what's remaining after the standard one. We have to bring it to the Bet HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, and we have to eat it there in the presence of God as an expression of gratitude to God for all that He's given us. So each year there was a different Ma'aser that had to be done. Now, how do we know when that year is up? When is the cutoff date? If I haven't yet given my Ma'aser for the year, how much longer do I have before it's too late? Tu B'Shvat. The year that determines when I have to give that year's Ma'aser is from one Tu B'Shvat to the next. So let's say, for example, this year is year 6 in the cycle. I don't think it is. I'm not sure exactly which year we are currently in. These laws actually generally do not apply outside of Israel. They apply in Israel. There are other agricultural laws that do apply here, but not Ma'aser. So let's say it's year 6. So I have to give the standard Ma'aser plus the Ma'aser for the poor people. So until when do I have to make sure I do this? If I didn't do it till now, I have to make sure to do it really quickly because next week is Tu B'Shvat, and then this year is finished and we start the next year. Okay? So on a practical level, that's what it means when we talk about Tu B'Shvat as a new year for trees. It's the fiscal year in terms of agricultural laws. Now, aside from the practical aspect, there is also a lot of symbolism in Tu B'Shvat that gives us people some important messages, some important lessons. One aspect of Tu B'Shvat, which we will focus on extensively tonight, are the Shivat HaMinim, which we mentioned briefly, the 7 species of grains and fruits unique to, or that is not necessarily unique to, but that Israel kind of specializes in, is blessed with. So we will talk about that extensively and what that means to us. But before we get there, there's something else very interesting about Tu B'Shvat, specifically about trees. The Torah tells us that man is a tree of the field. In other words, trees are a metaphor for us. There's a lot we can learn for ourselves from trees. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask you to take a few minutes and think of, I'm going to actually give you some papers with different parts of words that are parts of trees or describe trees or tree related, and see if you can come up with some lessons for us as people. Okay? So I'll give you each 2. I'll start with that. Okay, I'm just picking randomly. There's no right or wrong answer. There's a lot of different thoughts and ideas that can come from these words. I'll give you a few minutes to think. Okay, anyone ready to share?
Anything about human?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I came with, I have seeds and roots. So seeds, I really relate this work with children, with love, with, we plant, how do you say, you put a little seed and then something great happens.
That's right.
Education is a seed for me.
Mm-hmm.
You
Beautiful.
plant this little education seed and then something important happens later.
Right.
Then roots are for me my parents, my feet, my family, all family in general. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Where you come from.
Exactly.
Very nice. Beautiful. So now about your past and your future. Your family are your roots, and your children are your seeds. Very nice. Beautiful.
Grow, I guess growing would mean that we need to grow spiritually, physically, and with our potential. So we need to realize different aspects, such as educating, eating well, to take care of our bodies, and spiritually to study, and such. So I can grow and tall. Again, realizing potential. However tall you are, you realize that height or that realizing. Just tall indicates to me potential. I'm not sure how that really.
You reach your full height. You could say that, right?
Okay, something like that.
Kind of connects to the growth. Through growth, we reach our full potential. We grow as high as we are really supposed to grow. Nice. So your ideas actually connect very nicely.
They do.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is like on the same tree, but all fruits different, like people.
Very nice. Very interesting point. Mm-hmm.
And also every fruit has seeds, what is gives new life and really.
Beautiful. One fruit makes more fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And strong, like we are strong to care our tasks, and we are flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we can see some distraction, whatever, we can go around.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Thank you. Beautiful points. They're all beautiful points. I'll add one too. I'll do branches. So branches are also known as limbs of the tree. And sometimes, as the expression goes, we need to go out on a limb. We need to break out of our comfort zone and try something that might be a little bit risky, but something that's important for us to try, and something that in the long run we know will really be good for us. So that's branches. So, and there's, I'm sure, so many more things we could learn from trees. We can probably be here all night talking about trees. They're a really wonderful metaphor for us humans.
Also, seeds that has fruits had seeds. Seeds has all information about how trees build.
That's right.
Like we.
That's right. One little seed. All the potential is there in one little seed. That kind of connects to what you were saying, Ingrid, about children, that there's so much potential in this one little child. So when we develop that, we water that seed, and we take care of that seed, then we really allow all that potential that, Valentina, you're saying is in that seed, we allow it to grow and to produce fruits. Because fruits are what we produce. Fruits are what trees produce, and our fruits are our children, or our deeds, our mitzvot, our wonderful, beautiful, lasting impacts on the world. And those fruits, like we mentioned before, Valentina mentioned, those fruit create their own fruit eventually. One good deed leads to another good deed, which leads to another, and you can never underestimate the power of our fruits, really. So yeah, a lot of beautiful things to learn from the tree. For the next part of the class, what we will be focusing on are the 7 species of the land of Israel, the Shivat HaMinim. So we'll begin that now, and we will begin with a look at text number 4, which is on page 52. It's a verse from the Torah, the 5th book, Deuteronomy. And Moses is telling the Jewish people what kind of place God is going to bring them to. For the Lord your God is bringing you to a good land, a land with brooks of water, fountains and depths, emerging in valleys and mountains. And here we come to what we're going to be highlighting in this class, a land of wheat and barley, grapevines and figs, pomegranates, a land of oil-producing olives, and dates, honey. So honey, but honey made of dates.
Honey made of dates?
Mm-hmm.
Dates.
I don't know if I've ever had that before, but apparently it could be done, and it's popular in Israel. Now let's move on to text 5. Here we have a verse from one of our books of prophets. A prophet named Malachi. He was one of the last prophets actually included in the era of prophets, and he lived around the time of the beginning of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. And he is giving over messages from God to the Jewish people. And one of the things that he says is that all the nations shall praise you. Shall praise you, meaning the Jewish people. For what? What are the Jewish people being compared to here?
For you shall be a land of desire.
Mm-hmm. We are called a land of desire. The Jewish people are being compared to a land of desire, which is explained that we are like rough earth, rocky earth sometimes. But inside of us, we have treasures. Just like the earth. On the surface, the earth doesn't look very pleasant, not very appealing. It's just rocks and dirt. But inside there are treasures, there are fruit, there are vegetables. There's a lot going on inside. And we are like that. We are like that earth. Inside we have treasures. And specifically the Jewish people are compared to the land of Israel. And so just like the land of Israel is known for its 7 species, the wheat, barley, grapes, pomegranates, figs, olives, dates, those are all metaphors for our inner fruits. We have those fruits inside of us that are part of our spiritual anatomy, part of our spiritual makeup, those fruits of Israel. And that is what we're going to explore today. So sometimes I wonder, am I a good person or am I a bad person? I have good intentions. Sometimes I don't have such good intentions. Sometimes I have good intentions, but my actions don't reflect those good intentions. Sometimes I don't intend to do the right thing. I end up doing the right thing. So what kind of person am I? Does this sound familiar? It's always a struggle. For example, it's a cold, rainy day, and I have a new book sitting on my coffee table, and I know I should really pay a visit to an elderly friend of mine who's probably homebound today. I know that's what I should do, but what do I want to do? I want to stay home and read my book. Or I really feel the need to start my day off on a more spiritual note. I really, truly want to start my day with prayer. But I get up in the morning, and my computer beckons, so just for 1 minute, just for 2 minutes, and then what happens? I end up on my computer, and there goes my opportunity for prayer. Or I believe in giving charity. I think it's important, and it's been a while since I gave charity, so I probably should give some, but I'm saving up for something, and it's not really a good time for me. Or one last example. I know she shouldn't get me so angry, but I'll give in to my temper. And these are all scenarios we go through constantly, this constant battle of I know what's right, but do I do what's right? Or it could even be the opposite. I don't really want to do what I'm supposed to do, but I force myself and I do it anyways. Sometimes there's this schism between what is right and what I know is right and what I actually do. So is there something wrong with me? What kind of person am I? Who am I? Am I good? Am I bad? Am I something in between? And the answer is that we are built with 2 drives. Very simple. The reason why there's a constant struggle in me is because I have a drive telling me one thing and another drive telling me the opposite. So what do you expect? And what are these 2 drives? So the first drive is a self-serving drive. It's all about me. It's what pushes me to do what I want, what I need. And the second drive is a godly drive. It's what pushes me to do what's right. Now the first drive, the self-serving drive, is also sometimes known as the animalistic drive. Because this drive in us does have something in common with what pushes an animal to do what it does. It's an instinct for self-preservation, for self-gratification. Why does an animal do what it does? It needs to. It wants to. Simple as that. And our drive, our self-serving drive, is exactly the same. It pushes us to do what I want, what I need. Now, of course, our self-serving drive will lead us to do different things, different actions that are much loftier than what an animal does, right? Our self-serving drive is not only about I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm tired, I'm in danger. Our self-serving drive can also tell us, go pursue knowledge. I want to learn. I want to know. Our self-serving drive can also tell us, go help that poor lady over there. I want to help her. I feel good when I help people. My self-serving drive can even tell me, go do a mitzvah. Go pray. It feels so good to pray. I love that spiritual feeling I get when I connect with God. I love it. Me, I love it. That's my self-serving drive telling me to do it. Our self-serving drive can tell us to do all kinds of great stuff, important things, but there's always that me there. Versus our godly drive. Our godly drive transcends my sense of self. It's not about me at all. It's about what is right, regardless of what I want or I feel. If it's right, it pushes me to do it. And this is instinctive to our godly drive. The same way when you see a bird building a nest. It's amazing what a bird could do, the intricate nest that a bird can build. But we don't say, wow, that bird is so talented. I can't build a nest like that. How can this bird do it? Oh, it's not our reaction because we know it's nothing to do with talent. It's not a talented bird. It's the instinct of the bird. Big deal. It's no big deal for a bird. It's a big deal for me because it's not my instinct. But it's no big deal for the bird when it's naturally programmed to do that. And it's the same thing with our godly drive. Our godly drive is programmed, so to speak, to do what God wants. Even if that might make me miserable. Even if I might suffer through doing this. The godly soul doesn't care because it's not about me, it's not about I. It's about doing the right thing. And to take that to an extreme, let's say our godly soul's pushing us to stand up for what's right. Even though we may be the only one of that opinion, we might be perceived as silly. We may even be perceived as cruel by the majority of people for standing up to the right thing. And if it was about me, I wouldn't do it. I care what people think about me. But the godly soul doesn't care. It's right. So what if you're perceived as cruel? So what if you're perceived as silly? So what if people laugh? So what if it hurts you? So what if it's hard for you? So what if it makes you miserable? It's what God wants. And that's what counts. It transcends our sense of self.
Sure. What happens if you are taking a decision, but you don't know why you are taking that decision? Even you don't know exactly why are you miserable, but you're still there. Like, it's not that you know exactly what you are doing, but you have no idea what you are there, but you are still there, miserable, you're suffering, but something bigger, like, make you do that. It's something personal, but like, I passed through something like that. I don't know why I did something, but now I can tell that after 8 years or 10 years of that, I am good, I'm okay, my family is okay, but for 3 years, everything was like that. And I had the choice to change that decision, but I didn't do that. I choose the difficult one. So now I can understand something.
So you don't even know which one of your drives may have been pushing you to do it. Exactly. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And it's not that I knew why I was choosing this decision. No, I had no idea why I chose that decision. But at the end, now I can tell you that yes, I choose that decision. But I didn't choose that decision. Someone else chose that decision for me, and now I am good. Or it's. I don't know if I explain myself, but
it turned out to be the right decision in the end.
But after several years
later,
I knew that was the
right
decision. Even it was so hard and so it hurt a lot, but at the end it was the right decision.
It's a very good point that you're bringing up. And it's an interesting point because I could relate to that in many ways. obviously every decision we make, even when it's conscious and we're aware of where it's coming from, there's always God behind moving us. Everything is within God's plan, and God's there pulling our strings and pushing us in directions that we're meant to go in. Even when we're aware of where from within us that decision is coming from. But I feel personally in my own life, and this sounds like what you're describing as well, there are times when it's just so obvious that God is picking you up and putting you somewhere, or giving you a little shove in a certain direction. And we wonder, what is going on with me? This is so not me, and why am I? And then in retrospect, you look back and say, wow, God was really there for me. I never would have done this if I was logically thinking it through. So it was just, God, my godly drive within me, just guiding me subconsciously of what I need to do.
No logical.
Right.
No logical.
So that sounds like the godly drive, because the godly drive is not about logic. It's just about doing what's right. Logic is what makes sense to me. So that's me making the decision. That's my ego drive. That's my self-serving instinct, my natural human instinct. We can call it that as well. But defying logic and transcending logic, that's transcending your sense of self, which should be purely your godly drive there. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Now let me ask you all a question. Going back to the 7 species of Israel, we have wheat and we have barley. We're going to start with those two. Now that I've described these 2 drives that we all have, which would you say would be symbolized by wheat, and which drive would be symbolized by barley? Any thoughts?
Which is something physically it's something that grows. I don't know, I'm trying to think how each of those things grow, or I don't know. The barley is more like little separate, like grains or wheat.
It's a good question. I'll give you a thought. And with that thought, it might be easier to distinguish between the two. The Talmud tells us that wheat is a people food and barley is an animal food. Barley's more coarse, wheat is more refined. Again, Natalia?
Instinct. Barley would be related to instinct.
Okay, which instinct? Both drives are instinctive in different ways. Instinctive to different things.
Me.
The me drive, you're saying.
Drive. And the wheat would be the spiritual.
Okay. Do the rest of you agree, disagree? Anyone want to add anything?
Both are self-serving drives, right? There is no God's drive, the God drive here in those 2, right?
You're talking about within us?
Yeah.
Well, one drive is godly, and one drive is self-serving.
What about wheat and barley?
That's what we're trying to figure out. Which is a metaphor for which drive?
Yeah.
So, Natalia, you are correct. Being that barley is an animal food, that would be a metaphor for our drive that is more animalistic, which instinctively goes for what I want, the me, myself. And wheat, being more refined, which is why it's considered a people food, it's more refined than barley, that would be a metaphor for the more refined part of me, my more refined drive, which is my godly drive that transcends my sense of self.
I'm going to remember that. Remember that wheat is refined.
That's right, wheat versus the barley. Now, which is the real me? The wheat or the barley? Which is really me?
Spirit is really who we are. We're spiritual beings having a physical experience.
Okay.
So the real me is the spiritual me.
Okay, but what about in your day-to-day reality? Does yourself not count for anything? Is that not really you, yourself?
I guess
You, yourself, the me, the I? Well, the reason why it's so hard to choose and to decide which one's the real me is because the truth is, they're both me, depending on who I choose to be at any given moment. That's who I really am. Naturally, we tend to gravitate more towards our self, or towards listening to and letting ourselves be guided by our self-serving drive. That's more natural to a human being. It's the more human drive, after all. It's very normal to make decisions based on me, to have our decisions revolve around my sense of self. That's very normal. It's very human. And that's sort of our default setting, so to speak. We're kind of programmed that we naturally make our decisions based on my sense of self. But what's important to remember is that the expression, "but I'm only human," doesn't really hold weight with us. Because it's not an excuse. I'm only human, therefore all my decisions are ego-based. Therefore I'm unable to transcend my sense of self. Therefore I'm unable to do the right thing if I don't feel like it. That's not true. There's no such thing as I'm only human, so I can't help it. We are human. And we recognize that, and that's a reality for us. We can't get around that. But at the same time, we have another part to ourselves. We have this godly drive within us, that's in us as much as our self-serving drive is, that we can tap into, we can connect to, and allows us to transcend this sense of self so we can do the right thing, even if we don't feel like it, even when we don't want to. And that's the wheat in us that we want to connect to, that piece of God within us. So if it's all about the wheat in us, if that's really the direction we want to go in, why did God give us that barley? Why do we have a self-serving drive? It just makes life more complicated. Why do you think it's there?
Well, we need it to realize our potential. It's part of the process of realizing our potential.
Okay, why? How's it part of the process?
We have physical bodies, and that enables us to do a lot of the things, study, do whatever. If we didn't have these physical bodies, then we wouldn't have those capabilities.
And what if we had a physical body without a self-serving drive? A physical body that is solely motivated by God, by our godly drive to do the right thing.
Then we wouldn't be choosing.
Ah, beautiful. We wouldn't be choosing. And what is the advantage of choosing?
Well, then we're choosing the will of God, and God's giving us that option.
Mm-hmm.
And in other words, God isn't controlling us.
Exactly.
God is giving us freedom of choice.
And that's how we grow, as you said. In other words, every time we face that struggle, which is daily, which is every hour, every minute, we're constantly struggling. And every time we face that struggle, we have an opportunity to make a choice, like Natalia said. We have an opportunity to choose to listen to our godly drive, or to be motivated by our godly drive. We have an opportunity to choose to be victorious over our self-serving drive, to quiet it down and listen to the godly drive that's in us. And every time we do that, this spiritual muscle gets stronger. You know, just like if we want our physical muscles to get stronger, we have to use them and train them and exercise them. Well, it's the same thing with our spiritual muscles. And being able to transcend our sense of self, that's a spiritual muscle. And the more we use it, the stronger it will be. Which means the more we say no to our self-serving drive, the stronger our godly drive will get. Because naturally, which drive is stronger? It's the self-serving one. But the more we put it down and the more we listen to our godly drive, the stronger the godly drive will get and the easier it will get to be able to transcend this our sense of self and our ego.
How we can find the right balance between barley and wheat?
Oh, that is an excellent, excellent question, and I'm so happy you brought it up. It's actually what I was going to ask. It's a great question, because we have the barley in us, right? So we have to figure out how to work with it, right? As many times as we say no to it, it's still going to be there, and it's still going to keep bothering us. It might be a little softer and a little weaker, but it's never going to go away. And the truth is, Valentina, that we don't have the barley only so we could say no to it. That's one reason God gave it to us. One reason we have the barley is so we could not listen to it, and then the barley is fulfilling its purpose. In other words, our sense of self, our self-serving drive, is fulfilling its purpose when we don't allow it to run our lives. But more than that, it's not just about pushing it off to the side. There's actually some quality in our self-serving drive itself that we want. That's powerful. That's important. Any of you ever taught in a classroom? Taught kids in a classroom? Okay, so you'll be able to relate to what I'm saying, Ingrid. You know how sometimes in a class you have the one troublemaker who gets the whole class on his or her side? You know, you could be giving a great lesson, and most of the students are focused and listening, but as soon as this troublemaker starts up and starts making trouble, gets all the kids into his or her game. So the teacher has a choice. The teacher could punish the troublemaker, could send the troublemaker to the principal's office, get him out of the room, and then could focus on the other kids and get them well behaved again, root out that trouble spot. Or, if she's smart, what will she do?
Is the trouble guy smart or the teacher?
The teacher's smart. Troublemaker's smart, we know that. He gets the whole class on his side already.
The teacher could put the troublemaker in her side.
Excellent. Excellent. Well said, Ingrid.
And then try to help her to do the...
Exactly. Exactly. That troublemaker obviously has a power.
Yes.
Yes, sending the troublemaker out of the room will solve the problem somewhat, right? She'll be able to control the rest of the class. But can you imagine if she gets the troublemaker on her side and has that troublemaker's power helping her to get the other kids involved in learning? The other kids will be involved in learning in a much stronger way than they would have been if she had just sent the troublemaker out of the room. Back to our self-serving drive. A passionate ego is very, very powerful. You know that feeling when you really want something? You know the expression, when there's a will, there's a way? When I want something, or I feel I need something, I will do anything I can to achieve it, to attain it, to connect to it. There's a very strong power in that self-serving drive. What we really want to do, ultimately, is to harness that power of our self-serving drive and use it to achieve the agenda of the godly life. In other words, we want to get our self-serving drive on board with the godly program. We want our self-serving drive, we want the me inside of us, we want our sense of self to want what the godly soul wants. And how do we do that on a practical level? We have to develop in ourselves a taste for the spiritual. If we try it out, we get to know godliness, we get to know the Torah, we get to know a spiritual life, we'll begin to like it. And that speaks to my sense of self. I enjoy my spirituality. My spirituality speaks to me. I want it. I need it. If I need my spirituality, you can bet my self-serving drive will do anything to achieve it. And at the end of the day, that's what the godly soul wants. They're on the same page. So basically, in such a scenario, You have the godly soul in the driver's seat, steering us, bringing us in the direction we want to go in. But the me drive is the gas pedal. It's the gas pedal. It's the energy behind it. And this brings us to the next of the 7 species. The first of the fruit, the grape. I'm going to take a look at text number 9, I believe. Okay, text number 9, 9b is on. But first, a question for you. Have you ever noticed that pretty much every Jewish ritual has to do with wine?
Central.
It's pretty central. Well, Shabbat, we have Kiddush, and then Havdalah. Okay, all the holidays, especially Pesach, we have 4 cups of wine, each Seder. Weddings, under the chuppah, there's wine. Brit Milah, there's wine. Purim, definitely lots of wine. It seems that our whole Jewish calendar with all its rituals can't really happen without the wine. And it's really interesting. It's kind of ironic, actually, because when you think about it, wine is considered such an indulgence. And of course, when wine is not used properly, when it's consumed in excess, then it leads to very inappropriate behavior. So it makes you wonder, why is wine, of all things, so central to our spiritual experiences, to all the holidays that, when we're working to connect to God through different mitzvot and life cycle moments when we're connecting to God in a very strong way. There's the wine, and the wine again, and the wine again. What is it about wine? So take a look at text 9. We see something very unique about wine from the book of Judges. Anybody want to read?
Wine that brings joy to man and God.
Mm-hmm. Now, wine bringing joy to man, that we can understand.
But to God.
But wine brings joy to God.
I didn't realize that.
And this goes back to the concept that we just discussed of getting our self-serving drive on the same page as our godly drive. Wine achieves this. Just think about it for a minute. The mitzvah has to be done with wine. It's an integral part of the mitzvah. It's how we do the mitzvah. For example, Kiddush. There's no Kiddush without the wine, right? So when you're doing the mitzvah of Kiddush, you're making God happy because it's a mitzvah. You're also making you happy because wine is enjoyable. There you got it. A beautiful synthesis of our 2 drives. Here we have our self enjoying a mitzvah. And that's what wine symbolizes. Wine, or grapes, is a metaphor for that ability in us to be able to synthesize the 2 drives. That when we do a mitzvah, when we do something godly, when we're working to connect to God, we shouldn't forget about our self-drive, the me drive, and we need to talk to it also. We need to speak its language. If we go all spiritual on ourselves, we can't really relate. It doesn't speak to us, and it's not so meaningful. But when we put the mitzvah in a context that we could relate to, that speaks to us, that's enjoyable and beautiful and meaningful, then we want that experience. And all the passion in us and the motivation in us and our sense of self will push us, do it again, it feels good, it's wonderful. We love to connect to God. And there we have the 2 on the same page. So that's grapes, the wine that comes from grapes. Moving on, in the fruits of Israel, what's next? Figs, and then pomegranates. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a fig and a pomegranate here to give you the visual, But try in your mind to picture the inside of a fig versus the inside of a pomegranate. There's quite a contrast in their physical appearance. What would you say is different about them, different from each other?
The fruit is on the outside in the fig.
Okay, I probably should explain myself a little bit better and rephrase the question. Specifically related to the seeds of the fruit. Specifically related to the inside of the fruit. Forget the outside for a minute.
Seeds of the fig are like attached to the fig, and the pomegranate has like has bigger seeds, and it's easy to take them out. To spread seeds.
That's true. That's true. And the reason for that is because in the pomegranate, each seed is kind of in its own membrane. They're separated. Whereas in the fig, they're so closely connected, you can't really separate them. Excellent. That's exactly the difference. And that symbolizes something within us, in our inner fruits. A fig is a metaphor for our ability to integrate our no, not necessarily. That actually we spoke about with the wheat and the barley and the grapes, bringing them together. Here I'm talking more about having integration in terms of what we feel, what we think, what we believe, and what I do. In other words, that what I do is in sync with what I believe. It's in sync with what I think. There's no double standards. Full integration. Mitzvot, doing a mitzvah, shouldn't really be about doing, but ultimately, as we learn from the fig, the mitzvah should be about being. In other words, you could have a scenario where I am who I am, I have my life, I do things my own way, how I like to do them, and once in a while, that includes doing a mitzvah here and there. It's fine, the mitzvot are getting done, but the mitzvot are being done. They aren't me. Or you could have a scenario where I am a Jew. I have a strong Jewish identity. I live a Jewish lifestyle. And therefore, whatever I do in my life will be a natural, organic outcome of that. I am living a holistic Jewish experience. I am Jewish. Therefore, my actions are mitzvot. Therefore, when I study Torah because I am Jewish. So automatically, that's expressed in my thought, in my speech, in my various actions. My Jewishness will be automatically expressed because that's who I am. That's full integration. That's a holistic experience. It takes in the whole person. That's the fig inside of us. And on a practical level, that could very simply be, I am so proud to be a Jew. I love being a Jew. So I want to find ways to express that. Simple as that. So my actions are in sync with what I feel and what I believe. It's one thing.
Level, I those things in certain level. But the most important thing is that I do that.
Exactly. The most important thing in Judaism is growth. No one's perfect, ever. And the main thing is step by step. And actually, you're bringing us in beautifully to the concept of the pomegranate. So thank you for bringing that up, Ingrid. Because a pomegranate is truly the opposite of the fig. Each seed is on its own. And that is a metaphor for our deeds and our thoughts not being in sync. That we may not truly believe. We may have doubts. We may not really be in this space right now to live a full Jewish lifestyle. I may not be interested in living a full Jewish lifestyle. I don't really care much about having a Jewish identity. I don't identify myself as a Jew. I identify myself as a Canadian or whatever. But there are certain mitzvot that I do because I believe it's important. It's tradition, it's culture, it's for my children, or whatever it is. So here you have isolated actions, which are mitzvot, but they don't reflect who I consider myself, the identity that I give myself. Right? Now, my question to you is, we are all pomegranates in many ways, right? No one has perfect integration in their lives. Nobody is perfect. We all have our pomegranate moments. We all have aspects of our personality where we behave like pomegranates, where our actions are not in sync with what we think and what we feel and what we believe. Yet, pomegranate is considered one of these beautiful special fruits that Israel is blessed with. So what could possibly be good about the message of the pomegranate? And actually, Ingrid, you started to bring this up before.
Yeah, sometimes it's really difficult to like lots of things. Yeah, you have to do it step by step. That maybe those steps in the future could
Lead
to a fig life.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Mm-hmm. Saying the pomegranate is the step by step that brings us to be like the fig, fully integrated.
Yeah.
Very beautifully said. You know, there are, we all have a certain comfort zone and a certain level and a certain place where we are in our lives. And we all have things that we're not ready for. Everyone. Nobody is perfect. It's impossible for a human being to be fully, fully integrated. Because we all have things to work on. We all have to grow in our Judaism, in anything, but in this context we're discussing Judaism. We all have things that we need to, that we're not ready for. So either I can tell myself, I'm not there yet, so I'm going to be true to myself, and I'm not going to take that step because I don't feel mentally or emotionally ready to take that step. It's just not me. Or, as you said, I can decide I may not be ready there 100%. I may not be completely emotionally ready to take the step. It's true it's not me. But it might never be me. I might never be ready. So I'm going to take the leap. I'm going to take the plunge. And I'm just going to go for it. And what you are essentially doing is you are transcending yourself. Yourself is telling you, till here. That's it. I am not ready to go further. By doing one action beyond what you're ready for, you broke out of your comfort zone and you transcended yourself. It's an amazing thing. And that's how we grow. That is the first step. In other words, like you said correctly, that sometimes in order to reach the full fig experience, or as much as we can of the fig experience, we need to start with pomegranate steps. We need to just do the actions, even if it's not 100% me. And hopefully what will happen, as you said, Ingrid, is that when you do an action enough, it becomes you. The rest of you catches up to the action, and you grow to be on the same page, on the same level as that action, which is a really, really special thing. And it shows a certain degree of open-mindedness to be able to do that, to be able to say, even if I'm not ready, I know I'm not ready. I am honest with myself, I'm not being a hypocrite. I know I'm not ready. But I'm open-minded enough to explore the possibility of doing it anyway, of taking that leap anyways. So that's the pomegranate, that energy in us that allows us to do that, pushes us to do that, to just take that leap even if we're not totally there yet. And we come to the olive. The olive symbolizes suffering. Let's take a quick look at text 11. Okay, take a minute to read it to yourself and see if you could isolate the word there that shows us how an olive is a symbol of struggle. Okay, we're talking about when the Jews are receiving the command of lighting the menorah in the desert, in the Mishkan in the desert, the tabernacle, and they're told to use olive oil for lighting the menorah. Olive oil that is a result of crushing the olive. And they shall take to you pure olive oil crushed for the luminary. What kind of imagery does this give you?
Could you repeat that?
The phrase? And they shall take to you pure olive oil crushed for the luminary.
Through our suffering, we become lights.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Crushed. In order to extract that pure oil, which will ultimately give us light, what do we need to do to the olive? We need to crush it. And this is not an easy one. But unfortunately, and hopefully it shouldn't be, but we probably could all think of times in our life when we have felt a little bit crushed. Life has crushed us a little bit. But those moments were moments of opportunity for us. Because we could choose to be defeated by our challenges, as we spoke about extensively in last class. We could adopt a self-pitying attitude. Oh, that always happens to me, and life is so difficult, and why me, and why me, and why me? Or we could allow this crushing process to extract the most beautiful, powerful part of me. And it's amazing to think about the different times that we went through challenges, the different resources that we find within ourselves that we never even knew were there. If not for the challenge, I mean, just life would have gone along simply and smoothly, and, I never would have had to dig deep in me and find those amazing, powerful resources that I do when I have a struggle to deal with, when I have a challenge to deal with, because a challenge requires a whole new set of tools, a stronger set of tools, a deeper set of tools. So suddenly we have to find them. And once we found them, we have them. And they're really amazing. And this opportunity, this challenge is really an opportunity to grow from and to change us into an even more amazing person. Just like the olives. We may have to crush the olive, not pleasant, but what do we get as a result? Pure olive oil, light. And then in contrast to the olive, we have the date. The date is all sweetness. Specifically, when we're talking about the date of Israel, we were talking about honey, date honey. Sweet. What is the date a metaphor for? What's our inner date? So almost going back to the beginning, our inner date is that sweetness deep, deep inside of us that doesn't know struggle, that doesn't know pain, where everything is beautiful and calm and harmonious. And that could only be our godly soul, our spark of God within us. Because in a human reality, there is struggle and there is pain and there's hardship. But in the godly reality, it's all good. It's all tranquil, calm. And the date tells us, don't worry, you do have sweetness inside of you. And you could connect to it. And you could bring it into your life. But it comes after a lot of work and a lot of struggle. Because to appreciate our inner dates, we have to work with our inner wheat and barley, and grapes, and olives, and pomegranates, and figs. And through all those different steps, that whole process of growth that we go through with our inner fruits, we reach the dates, we reach the sweetness inside of us. In fact, if you have a chance later, I'm not going to go into it now because we're reaching the end of the class, but if you have a chance to look at text 12 a little bit later, the era of Mashiach is compared to a date reality. It's all sweet. It's all good. And that ultimately is where we are working to get towards through our growth here in our times now, which is very, very difficult. But at least we know that we have these tools, and we have these gifts, these beautiful fruit inside of us that we can tap into on our journey to get there. We have our wheat and our barley. We have our two drives guiding us, which hopefully we're going to synthesize so that they work together. So we have all the power of the barley achieving the goals of the wheat. And we achieve that through the grape. The grape is a metaphor for how we synthesize the energy of the barley and the lofty goals of the wheat. And then we have the metaphor of the fig. That power within us to create our identity, our Jewish identity and our Jewish lifestyle. So everything revolves around that. And the pomegranate within us, so we can get to that fig reality, step by step, the value of our actions. And the metaphor of the olive, the gains out of our struggles. And last, the metaphor of the dates, which is where I'll end up to be. Now it's interesting that Tu B'Shvat is in the middle of the winter. We're celebrating trees and their fruits in the middle of the winter. I mean, please, on a day like today, we think of trees producing fruits and blossoms, and not really. But what's really amazing is that around this time of year, the sap starts to run inside the tree. So the potential for rebirth and the production of fruit is starting to wake up because of the sap.
And here in Vancouver, we do have that.
That's true. And we're a little luckier than on the East Coast with their snowstorm right now. Sap is like that sticky juice, kind of, that sticky syrup inside of the tree. SAP. Yeah, you look it up. Find out how you say it in Spanish. I have no idea. So it's interesting, when we look at the trees now, we don't think Tu B'Shvat, we don't think blossoming and potential and fruits. But it's not only about what we see. Inside, there is that potential. And of all the metaphors of Tu B'Shvat, I think this is a very powerful one to end with. That sometimes, we know there are fruits. And fruits are coming. And so we have fruits within us. We have all kinds of potential and all kinds of energies within us. We have the godly drive within us, the godly soul. But we don't feel it. It's not us. We're not expressing it. We feel we're kind of spiritually dead, like a tree in the middle of the winter. But what Tu B'Shvat tells us is you're not spiritually dead. Because inside of you, there is so much spiritual energy just moving around and flowing and waiting to be tapped into. There is so much potential inside every single one of us to grow and to connect to God and to add in our Judaism. No matter what we may be feeling, it doesn't ever change the fact that it's all in us, just waiting for us to use it, for those fruits to come forth.
So Tu B'Shvat is a good season to plant things in our life, like
Yes.
to put in practice ideas or
Exactly. Beautiful.
wishes.
To implement change.
Yes.
Yes. To plant seeds of change.
It is real to
Absolutely.
do that.
We spoke in the first class how each holiday has a certain spiritual energy around it that allows us to take the message from the holiday and apply it in our lives. So the energy surrounding us now, right now, we're in Shvat. Tu B'Shvat's next week, and the closer we get to Tu B'Shvat, the stronger this energy in the air will be. But right now, there is a spiritual energy in the air helping us bring out those fruits within us, helping us grow, helping us change, helping us water the seeds so we can grow the fruit, helping us nurture the spirituality inside of us. It's easier now than any other time because that's what Tu B'Shvat's about. Therefore, that's the energy surrounding it. So we have all that hope in the air right now so that we could achieve that.
help us from within.
Exactly. Thank you very much, ladies. That concludes the class for tonight. If anyone has any questions or would like to add anything, by all means, feel free. From these words. I'll give you a few minutes to think. Okay, anyone ready to share?
Anything about human?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I came with, I have seeds and roots. So seeds, I will relate this work with children, with love, with, we plant, we how do you say, you put a little seed and then something great happens.
That's right.
Education is a seed for me. You
Beautiful.
plant this little education seed and then something important happens later.
Right.
Then roots are for me my parents, my feet, my family, all family in general. So
Nice.
Yeah,
Where you come from.
exactly.
Very nice. Beautiful. So now about your past and your future. Your family are your roots, and your children are your seeds. Very nice. Beautiful.
Grow, I guess growing would mean that we need to grow spiritually, physically, and with our potential. So we need to realize different aspects, such as educating, eating well to take care of our bodies, and spiritually to study.
We give 10% of all produce to the tribe of Levi. In the third and sixth year, for example, we give maaser, we give 10% of what's left after the standard maaser, we give to poor people. In year 1, 2, 4, and 5 of the cycle, we give a different kind of maaser. We have to give 10% of what's remaining after the standard one. We have to bring it to the Bet HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, and we have to eat it there in the presence of God as an expression of gratitude to God for all that He's given us. So each year there was a different maaser that had to be done. Now, how do we know when that year is up? When is the cutoff date? If I haven't yet given my maaser for the year, how much longer do I have before it's too late? Tu B'Shvat. The year that determines when I have to give that year's maaser is from one Tu B'Shvat to the next. So let's say, for example, this year is year 6 in the cycle. I don't think it is. I'm not sure exactly which year we are currently in. These laws actually generally do not apply outside of Israel. They apply in Israel. There are other agricultural laws that do apply here, but not maaser. So let's say it's year 6. So I have to give the standard maaser plus the maaser for the poor people. So until when do I have to make sure I do this? If I didn't do it till now, I have to make sure to do it really quickly because next week is Tu B'Shvat. And then this year is finished and we start the next year. Okay? So on a practical level, that's what it means when we talk about Tu B'Shvat as a new year for trees. It's the fiscal year in terms of agricultural laws. Olives, and the last one is the dates. So it's a custom on Tu B'Shvat to partake in some of those fruits, the fruits of Israel, and to eat a new fruit, a fruit that you haven't yet eaten this season. So we could recite the blessing of Shechianu, which is the blessing we recite on new things. Now the Mishnah actually terms Tu B'Shvat as the new year for trees, the Rosh Hashanah for trees. Now what exactly does that mean? What does a new year for trees mean? So really it has to do with Jewish agricultural laws in the land of Israel. That's what it boils down to. So in other words, from one Tu B'Shvat to the next is sort of a fiscal year for trees, for fruit-bearing trees. For example, there's a Jewish law called ma'aser, which means tithes, giving 10% of what we have to charity. Now, Jewish agriculture works in a 7-year cycle. So the 7th year is the Shemitah year. I don't know if you've heard of that term, if you're familiar with it. Shemitah is when the land rests, when the land is not worked. Okay, that's the 7th year, and then we begin again from year 1. Now, with regards to ma'aser, to tithes, each year of the cycle, there's a different kind of ma'aser that we're obligated in the land of Israel. For example, the first year of the cycle, we have, or actually all six years of the cycle, a man was once sitting in a cafe, outdoor table in a cafe, and he sees across the street 2 city workers. The first was digging a hole, and then the second one would follow behind him and fill the hole. And then they would go a couple more steps. The first would dig a hole, and his partner would come behind him and fill the hole. And they continued doing this through the length of the entire block until they finally made their way across the street where this man is sitting at the cafe. And as they reach the spot in front of him, he just has to ask. He says to them, "Listen, I've been watching you 2 work for the past 20 minutes or so, and I can't for the life of me figure out what you're doing." So the first guy says, "Yeah, there's usually 3 of us working together, but the guy who plants the tree is sick today." So talking about trees, we have just entered the Hebrew month of Shvat. And the significant day in Shvat is coming up next week. It's Tu B'Shvat. Next week, yeah. The 15th day of Shvat. And that is the day when we celebrate trees and their fruits. Specifically, the 7 fruits that are the fruits that the land of Israel is blessed with. 2 grains, wheat and barley, and the 5 fruits, the grapes, pomegranate, fig. Now, aside from the practical aspect, there is also a lot of symbolism in Tu B'Shvat that gives us people some important messages, some important lessons. One aspect of Tu B'Shvat, which we will focus on extensively tonight, are the Shivat Haminim, which we mentioned briefly, the 7 species of grains and fruits unique to, or that is not necessarily unique to, but that Israel kind of specializes in, is blessed with. So we will talk about that extensively and what that means to us. But before we get there, there's something else very interesting about Tu B'Shvat, specifically about trees. The Torah tells us that man is a tree of the field. In other words, trees are a metaphor for us. There's a lot we can learn for ourselves from trees. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask you to take a few minutes and think of, I'm going to actually give you some papers with different parts of words that are parts of trees or describe trees or tree related, and see if you can come up with some lessons for us as people. Okay? So I'll give you each 2. We'll start with that. Okay, I'm just picking randomly. There's no right or wrong answer. There's a lot of different thoughts and ideas that can come.